Hello, welcome to the Escape Podcast, your source for stuff. Mostly movies.
How you doing, Brandon?
Good, how you been?
I'm doing well. It's been a while.
Yes, I've had a busy week. I was in Daytona Beach.
Don't care.
But it's time to get another episode going.
Yeah, might as well.
So, for a while you've been talking about, you want me to go back and talk a little bit about some of the stuff that you did at the beginning of the podcast?
Yeah, back in the golden days before you ruined it.
Back in the past?
Yeah.
As opposed to Back to the Future?
Uh-huh. Yeah, I thought it'd be cool for you to be able to throw your 2 cents in on some of the movies that you missed out on talking about. Mm-hmm. And I thought it'd be cool to just see how my opinion is, if it's changed, stayed the same, whatever. So...
And just so everybody knows, you might be able to hear it, maybe not, there is a cricket right outside the window.
No, there's not.
Can't really do anything about it.
So, back in October of 2016, Dave and I released our very first episode, which was on Star Trek The Motion Picture.
Was that the first one you recorded?
I think it actually was the first one we recorded. We recorded it, I think, a few months before we ever actually got it released. Because I think we actually started in May of that year, but... It took us...
you guys planned so much better back then than we do now.
Yeah. So, Star Trek The Motion Picture, that was one. It was funny. Dave and I were talking about, like, what do we want to start off with? And I was already kind of thinking Star Trek The Motion Picture because, you know, obviously we're big Star Trek guys. And he ends up coming to me and he's like, yeah, how about Star Trek The Motion Picture?
You and John just saw that in the theater.
Yeah, John and I just saw that, a week or two ago for the 40th anniversary.
Doing the flashback thing.
Yeah, that was Phantom Events, but yeah, same thing.
Okay.
So, but first off, what's your thoughts on Star Trek: The Motion Picture?
What did you say in your original review for it?
I'd have to go back and listen. I think all in all, I liked it, and if memory serves, I think I always felt like it is a difficult watch, but I appreciate it, and it's very different, obviously, from the other Star Treks. It's almost like they rebooted it in a way, because if you really look at from 2 on, they really almost never reference anything from the motion picture that I'm aware of. If it is, it's so subtle I haven't noticed it or heard about it. But, I mean, I think I ended up liking it. Dave didn't. That's where I found out about his brand loyalty, because he said basically how he didn't like the movie, if memory serves, and I was like, well, why do you have it? And he's like, brand loyalty. So... But no, let's first talk. What do you think? For me,
it may have been close to 20 years since I've seen it, actually.
Wow.
But I remember bits and pieces of it. I remember liking it. Mm-hmm. For me, I found it fascinating.
Yeah.
Because it was a look at... Because I'm more used to next-gen era type Star Trek. I used to watch the original series with my dad a little. But I wasn't a huge fan of that original series as much as like you or Dave. So... I'd never seen the movies before either, so it was cool to go back and look at them. I remember thinking some of the special effects were cool.
Yeah.
The look of the Klingons was interesting.
Yeah. That
was the first time they deviated from the original series.
Right, and really, they never gone back to that look since. It's still...
It's similar.
Well, they got the ridges going, but it's still different than anything they've done since then.
Seems like every time something Star Trek comes out, they have to change it a little bit.
They slightly alter them. I was saying...
Whether it's the ridges, or the way their facial hair is, or adding genitalia.
Well, when it comes to genitals, the more the merrier.
Yes. Well, first of all, I also grew up with the Next Generation now. The original series was the first one I owned, the entire box set. That was like in the early 2000s, so I was able to watch those. Used to have a notepad, and I used to write down for every episode what I liked about it, what I didn't like about it, gave it a grade.
The theme.
Yeah. And almost in a way, I feel like they should have used that theme somewhere in every movie. Like, I'm not saying it had to be the only theme, because Wrath of Khan has a cool theme too, but I think somewhere it should have been like where this is the Star Trek theme. Every series and every movie has its own identity through music, but as long as they somehow snuck in that theme, so you know, like it's part of a franchise.
It's weird kind of because we started out with the Next Generation, hearing that theme to open up the movie.
Right. Tempo's a little faster, but yeah. Because I remember the first time I saw the motion picture was at Dave's house years ago, and obviously it was the original cut, the theatrical cut. And the first thing I thought was like, hey, that's the Next Generation theme.
Right, and it's different. The original theme song sounded more... It definitely had that older sound to it. It came out in the 60s, but Oddly enough, reminds me kind of like an I Love Lucy style show where they had that orchestrated opening.
Right.
And it was just kind of like a catchy jingle to get you into it.
I hear there were lyrics written for the original series theme, but they ultimately didn't use it. But
sing them for us.
I don't know them.
Just make it up. Go for it.
That will be at the end. I don't know.
This is Star Trek. Ooh.
All right. So, anyway, the motion picture. Keep going.
I remember the music was good. I mean, outside of the theme, was it Jerry Goldsmith that did that?
Yes, it was. And I don't think he came back till the Final Frontier, which is when Shatner brought back that theme. Like, it's also a little faster because by that point, the Next Generation series was on. Mm-hmm. So, I thought it was cool they brought back that theme to really...
And they had the Indian model, Ursus Kimboda. What's her name?
That sounds good enough to me. I don't know.
They went with the odd decision to go ahead and just shave her bald.
Yeah, I don't know what exactly that had to do with the character. I guess just to make her look a little...
Interesting.
I guess, yeah. But
I've only ever seen her in one other thing, and it was a movie that was terrible enough to be featured on Mystery Science Theater.
Okay. So, all in all, you mostly say you remember the music, the Klingons, and her.
I remember, obviously, Voyager, the antagonist, in a way. I
guess.
Was it a life form?
Essentially. I mean, some people, I think in Star Trek The Return, which is a book that, quote-unquote, Shatner wrote, but I think it's that there's a married couple, Garfield Stevens, Judith and somebody, Garfield Stevens, they kind of helped him write it. I don't know how much they really wrote versus how much he wrote, but in that book, it's kind of interesting. They tied together the motion picture with the Final Frontier, with Deep Space Nine, with all of them, and what you essentially are finding out in that book is that when... Do you remember the end, right?
Yeah.
Okay, when what happens at the end happens, it essentially is the first Borg, so to speak, or the segue into the Borg.
I know they tried to tie it together, and it seems kind of like it would fit. Mm-hmm. They both have similar backgrounds. Race of beings that kind of integrated themselves with technology.
Well, yeah, there was an original series episode, I think, that kind of had this theme. There was some kind of robot, I thought, in it, like, something where it kind of had its children, and there was, like, this dinosaur-esque cave opening, and they were, like, offered, like, their sacrifices, essentially, to it, right? And the crew gets stranded there, and ultimately they go in there, and they find out there's a bunch of... It's a machine. And basically, I think it's keeping them alive because it kind of views them as children.
It's like there's a theme running across the galaxy of every now and then you'll get this civilization that does that.
Yeah, and and I think they did that the same thing with. There was another original series episode, not the one with Nomad, because I remember that was the thing. It was about a robot, and it had these extreme abilities. I think it could it made the ship able to go to warp 13. Okay. And all this stuff, but it was something about where its inventor was a different man named Kirk, but it mistook James T. Kirk as its creator, so it would listen to him.
That's understandable.
And, well, it's like, it's so similar in a way, but, I mean, we were talking, John and I, about how, the ship, everyone fusses about how long they take to cruise that ship, to look at it. And, yeah, it is long.
Are you talking about Voyager?
No, the Enterprise.
Series.
No, the Enterprise in the motion picture, because that's the first time you're seeing it in all its glory, so to speak.
No, I have no problems with that. Like, it's
but
the
most
first time
people
you're seeing
do
it on the big screen.
Right.
It's a larger model, more detail, and
well, yeah, exactly. And it kind of makes sense with Kirk that they said he hasn't been in space for 2 years or something like that, and basically it's almost like a totally new ship, so he's kind of...
Standards in movies have kind of changed, though, too, because...
True.
Nowadays, the camera angle has to switch every 5 seconds, or there has to be an explosion or something happening.
Yes.
Back in the day, it was more of a spectacle.
Right. Well, I mean, I feel like you had to introduce... The ship was like a character almost in and of itself, so for all those diehard fans, from 10 years, from 69 to 79, when that movie came out, I mean, it was almost, I think, a treat just for them to see the ship like that. And, it does. It looks great. So I don't have a problem with either. Yeah, it is long. I can understand. It's like, I can understand why a lot of people would have a problem with it or find it hard to set through. Like, Dave has told me it's his least favorite. He tries not to watch it. John had told me he didn't really like it. Now, he did say when we walked out of the theater a week ago or whatever, he liked it. That was the most he's ever enjoyed it. because I had told him, I was like, this,
all right,
we've never seen it on a big screen. This is how it's really meant to be seen.
And you said there are 2 different cuts of the film. I don't want you to go into all the details.
Yes.
But that version that you guys saw that John liked
was the theatrical cut, the original cut.
The one that they showed in theaters. And the one that most people are used to seeing is...
Probably at this point, I would assume the director's cut. I think it was, I want to say early 2000s, maybe 2001. Robert Wise, they did a director's cut. And for the longest time, I thought it was mostly just adding in some shots.
I probably saw the theatrical cut then, because when I watched it was actually on a Betamax.
Okay. Yeah. Well, like, for instance, the big one that stands out is when you see Vulcan. You know, it looks way different. But another thing I was surprised to find out...
Did they add the scene with Jabba?
Yeah. Is that there's a lot of shots where they took deleted scenes that were never in the theatrical cut and re-added them to it. But then there was also a lot of scenes that were cut from the director's cut. So there's just a lot of dialogue that's both added and taken away. It was pretty cool to watch it that way. I enjoyed it.
I remember, I was a teenager when I saw it, and I remember thinking a little bit, like, the name, especially with the name Voyager, like, there's a little bit of a sexual thing going on there. But we watched recently, even though it's been a while since I've seen the movie, Red Letter Media did a video about it.
Don't bring them up.
Under their review section, I believe, where they brought up all the stuff in the movie, and they alluded that the film was about, sex.
And candy.
A lot of the things I've heard about the movie other than that is that a lot of people do think it's more of one of the boring ones. And I guess you have to be more of a Star Trek fan to really enjoy it.
I've always kind of thought of it as more, it's like the 2001 A Space Odyssey of Star Trek. It kind of, and I almost feel like if this makes sense, it's the most sci-fi of the Star Treks. A lot of the Star Treks went into a maybe more sci-fi action kind of realm, and that's great. But this is more like the mystery of, and it's weird, like, when you see this thing and you see, like, it's almost like, what's that movie back in the day where, like, they shrink and they go inside a body?
Yeah.
Like, because you're seeing, that's almost what it feels like. You're seeing things, like, move, like, almost like they did a good job portraying it as a living machine. Like, things are actually moving as almost like you think the inner workings of a body would be, and it was just kind of cool.
And it's interesting to see the scale of the ship and the shuttlecrafts and all that.
Yeah.
And one of the things that's interesting, especially about those earlier movies, is because this came out right after Star Wars, right?
Yeah, so Star Wars came out in 77, this came out in 79.
Right, so Star Wars kind of ignited the, we can do this big action, well, this one wasn't very action-y.
Well, yeah.
Big space adventure, and one of the cool things about these early Star Trek movies is you get to see a little bit more, like, aliens walking around, and they look a little different. Mm-hmm. They look a little bit more kind of like some of the guys that are walking around in Star Wars, which makes them interesting.
In the more current, you're saying, like, the newest Star Treks?
No, like in the movies and stuff, you can see aliens walking around in the background that you'd never seen before on the show, because either the effects were too cheesy, but you get to see, like, the good makeup effects, even if they're in the background.
Yeah, well, you're talking like JJ's stuff?
No, the old ones, because I remember there were weird-looking aliens in that you would never see on the TV show.
Well, like, I know in the scene where they're all gathered in, it's, I don't know what you call it, a recreation room or just a giant storage room, there's, like, you can see a few things in the background.
The scene I'm thinking of wasn't from this movie, but I've seen it in multiple movies, but the one from, was it The Search for Spock, where McCoy is in the bar? Mm-hmm. And you get all that stuff. It's almost like the cantina scene in a way.
Yeah. So, and they have their own version of a Yoda, kind of.
Right.
He says things
Star
slightly
Trek
backwards.
has always been more cerebral, where Star Wars is more adventurous, so you get more of the outlandish stuff in Star Wars.
Yeah.
You get to see more visual spectacle with all the different aliens and stuff.
Right.
So it's cool to see that kind of stuff in Star Trek.
Yeah, that was one thing I always did appreciate about Star Wars, is the aliens are really, well, most of them are pretty unique looking, where Star Trek was a lot of just
the nose and the forehead,
weird noses, sometimes ears, or the chin and stuff. Way to go.
I know.
But bottom line, I still do appreciate the movie. I like it. It's not one of my top favorites, and it's one of those take a year off before you watch it again. For you, you're due for another viewing, but I still like it. I still think it was a really interesting story. Like, I mean, I can put myself in the point of view of, like, if you never saw this before, like, it is interesting to find out, and you know nothing about it. Like, Voyager was Voyager. They just they read it literal, like V, and then everything was smudged out Jur. And it kind of reminds me a little of Galaxy Quest, which we will get to eventually, because in that movie, like, the aliens took everything quite literal. If something said, if because they were copying the show, if someone had a typo on, something on the wall, they typed it wrong, And anyway, I think it's pretty cool. I think it's interesting, and I think it's worth checking out. However, now there's a guy that I work with. There was 3 franchises he was talking about getting into. Star Trek, Godzilla,
and you
James
couldn't talk
Bond.
him out of seeing this one, but he ended up seeing it.
Well, he was he was really adamant about start from the beginning. I was like, look, if you start from the beginning, you're probably going to get turned off to it. I said, start from the Wrath of Khan. If you like it, then you can go back. And he told me he couldn't even get through Wrath of Khan. So I was like, well, then good thing you didn't watch the motion picture.
Yeah, I don't think most people could probably just sit down and watch it. I think you either have to be a fan of Star Trek and or just somebody who enjoys film in general, and even then, that might not be enough for you.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I think it's the type of movie that this style is coming back with, like Interstellar, and there was something else that just recently came out where it's not so much about shooting and blowing up and crazy looking aliens. It's more like the mystery of what's happening is, it's the more classic sci-fi that is coming back a little bit. What was that one with George Clooney? It was a remake, Solaris or something. I can't remember.
Batman and Robin.
Sure. Anyway, you get my point. But yeah, I still like it.
Okay.
What was your final?
I need to go back and watch it, but I remember I enjoyed it, and that at some point I'm going to go back and watch it again. I might think that it's boring now, but back then I enjoyed it.
Okay. So, in November of 2016, Dave and I released our Independence Day review. What would you like to say about that?
Welcome to Earth.
That's a good start.
I remember as a kid, like, this was one of those movies that was huge when it came out. What were we, like 10? 11? No, well, we were older.
No,
yeah. It was 96, right?
96, yeah.
Okay, so we're about 13 or so.
Somewhere between 1 and 50.
But this was back in the day, in the 90s, is like, there were a couple big blockbusters that came out, and everybody got in on it.
Yeah.
Like 98 Godzilla, Yokiro talk about that's a big lizard here, lizard, like everything. Like,
that's racist.
Or they even did the same thing. We talked about that a little bit with Demolition Man. Everybody would promote the crap out of it, so you'd see it all over TV. It was just like a huge thing.
Yeah.
Nowadays, it's like every month there's at least 1 or 2, if not 3 or 4, big movies. They're all blockbusters. They're so easy to make now. So this is who's the director? Emmerich?
Rowan Emmerich? Roland, whatever.
So, he's known for kind of like
the homies.
disastery movies.
Well, I've always heard it said that he basically was trying to be Spielberg. He is not. Well, I know, but he
not
did
terrible.
The Godzilla. He did with the time portal.
Stargate,
thank you. Or not time, but space portal.
I would say he's more like Michael Bay.
Well, that's what he wanted to be.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so this was a big thing when it came out. Will Smith was kind of huge. He was towards the end of Fresh Prince there.
You had Jeff Goldblum coming out from Jurassic Park in '93, so he was doing pretty good there in the mid to late '90s, huh?
And this is also around the same time, I think, maybe slightly after, was Men in Black.
Yeah, I guess. I don't remember what year that was exactly, but yeah. Yeah,
so Will Smith was kind of on a roll there, too. So this is like a huge event. Everybody can picture the scene. Like, as soon as you say the name of the movie, the first thing you're going to think is the giant disc above the White House blowing it up. And back in the day, that was just a huge thing. Yeah. If you go back and watch it now, I thought the movie was awesome. I loved it as a kid. I watched it like 100 times.
Yeah.
Go back and watch it now. Maybe it doesn't hold up quite as good. The special effects aren't as good.
Okay.
The story is not as good. But there's still a lot of fun with it. Thank you. It was cool to see Data, Brent Spiner, as the crazy long-haired scientist in the bunker at Area 51. There's lots of good things about the movie, but it's not as good as I remember it being.
Okay. Now, I remember I was in 5th grade, and we had taken a trip to Canada. Mm-hmm. And we were at this like mall in Canada. I remember there was these big like banners coming down, and I think it was showing like the Empire State Building and like a ship and like a laser starting to come down. And I remember I was like, "What is this?" Because like, yeah, there was the internet, but I didn't have it for like ever. So I remember when it finally came out, I was really interested. I kind of see it as like he's very much trying to tap into that War of the Worlds type thing.
The movie is very much War of the Worlds,
and I liked it back then. I think. Actually, I probably have grown to like it a little more. And I'll agree, yeah, I mean, is some of the effects outdated? Sure. Some of the jokes maybe don't land as, or whatever. But this is a fun movie. For me, I still think the president's speech toward the end was it still holds up as a great speech.
Was that a trope then as much as it is now?
I don't remember anything before that really. I mean, not to say they didn't, but I don't recall
to me like the first big one that I remember. I'm sure they had it in other movies before that,
probably.
But like that is the one.
But it's great, and like I almost feel like none of them really can quite live up to this one. I thought Jeff Goldblum was great. I mean, it's and I thought that was like one of the earlier movies I remember where it was kind of like doing there's these people over here, and this is like what they're doing as this is happening, and then there's the B story, the C story, the D story. Because let's see, you had Jeff Goldblum, you had Will Smith, you had what the president was doing, and then you had Randy Quaid, and then essentially they all kind of meet more or less. I don't think Randy Quaid met what's his face, Jeff Goldblum, but you know what I mean. Like, eventually Jeff Goldblum meets up with the president, so on and so forth. But it was kind of interesting to just kind of have this thing where there's this event that's covering them all, no pun intended, but as they're all figuring things out or whatever. Like AVP kind of did that, if you remember. And that's a weird analogy or example to pull out, but I remember AVP kind of did that where before they get to Antarctica, like they're showing them all talk about stuff and relate to this same thing. But I remember really liking that in the end. And Transformers did that too. Again, weird example, I know. But I think I like it more now because it's not only nostalgic, but I just think it was a fun action movie. Yeah, I mean, you just turn your brain off, you have fun.
The design of the ships was cool. I don't know if you had a Nintendo 64.
I did not.
The Star Fox 64 game, there was... I feel like there's either a level or maybe the multiplayer where one of the things you do is you basically fight one of those ships.
Okay.
And you have to even destroy the middle part last.
Okay.
Like that. It had a big influence. It was very War of the Worlds like, and I remember thinking that too, like, oh, here come these unstoppable flying saucers from another world. They can't do anything about it, and then they have to defeat them with a virus, while in War of the Worlds it was literally a virus.
I thought when they're first shooting their missiles at the ship, the first encounter, and like all of a sudden there's the shields. I thought that was just really cool to see the shields, the way it's invisible until something hits it. And I also like the way they kind of built up the aliens. Like, again, a lot of these modern movies, they got to show you your monster like right off the bat because people can't hold.
You never
their attention.
saw the full body. You basically saw the head of him.
Well, let's
Except
see.
for maybe the one that laying on the table.
Well, that's what I'm getting at. Is even when you
nowadays it would be all CG too.
Yeah, you saw practical. The alien when Will Smith punches him, but you're not getting the greatest glimpse. But yeah, it's you find out it's biomechanical suits, so it's like a living body inside of a living body kind of thing.
And there's another tie into Men in Black a little bit too, because they had the alien that was within, like the little alien in the head. Didn't they?
Yeah. But I think it was both designs were pretty cool looking. I wouldn't have minded if they even did where maybe the smaller versions are kind of the generals and the bigger ones are like just the soldiers. But combining them two was fine.
One thing that I thought was cheesy back then, I always think is kind of cheesy, is when the alien kind of probes the mind of the president, and it's like, oh, I saw what they're doing. They go from planet to planet, just taking all the resources. It's like, oh, you got their whole plan like that. It was cheesy, but
I don't mind. It was just a way to let you know exactly what and why. I didn't mind it.
It was a fun movie, and it was a huge deal when it came out. I think it's been a little bit forgotten. I'm sure
really
well.
I don't know. I feel like a lot of people probably have this. Okay, I mean, I did see they did a sequel, a couple years, like 3, maybe 4 years ago.
And
now
that didn't get very good reviews.
I finally saw it. And,
did you?
Well, once it came out on Prime or whatever, Netflix or whatever.
Well, I've been interested in it, even though I've heard it's horrible.
It is horrible. It's okay. It makes the first one look like a masterpiece.
Yeah?
Yeah. Just, you can leave it alone if you want, but I don't know.
Would you recommend, like, let's say somebody's 20 years old, would you tell them to go back and watch the movie?
The first one?
Yeah.
Yeah. If I talked to some guy that, young kid that never saw it, I would say, yeah, give it a shot.
I don't know. I feel like the fact that it was so big when it came out in a time where we didn't have giant movies all the time.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that helped us.
Because nowadays I feel like it's probably not much of a movie. Like, if somebody watched it, it'd be like, yeah, it was all right.
I mean, I think the kids today, sounds old, just what grabs our attention now. Like, for instance, not to bring it back to Star Trek, Brittany and I was just showing her the classic trailer for Wrath of Khan. Then there's this YouTube channel, they do what's called like modern trailers, so they'll cut the trailer, maybe even add a few scenes, add some music differences, and
make it look updated.
It looks like a brand new movie, and when she saw it, she's like, wow, I kind of want to watch that now. So there's different tastes now, kids, but whatevs. Okay. All right, so the third episode that Dave and I ever did back in November 2016 was Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Now, how can you tie this one to Star Trek?
They were Paramount.
I'm sure there's more connections than that, but sure.
Yeah.
Now, which one is this? I'm not the biggest Indiana Jones.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Is this the one with Sean Connery?
It is not. Is this
the first one, then?
This is the first one, which was just called Raiders of the Lost Ark. Once they released the box set, that's when they kind of added the Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark. But this is the Ark of the Covenant, obviously. Mm-hmm. Sala, which from Lord of the Rings, Gimli, whatever his name is,
the dwarf.
Little dwarf. He also did Man Ray from SpongeBob. Okay. The voice. Anyway, Belloc, anything? The Idol, the whole rolling ball, and all that stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot of classic scenes in that.
Yeah,
where he grabs his hat.
No, that was Temple of Doom.
Where he has the whip.
Yes, he has a whip in this one.
Never
used it again.
School teacher that all the girls like.
So, well, yeah, this one has a lot of connections with The Last Crusade, which we'll probably want to just save that to when we get to that, but go.
All right, well, yeah, I'm not the biggest Indiana Jones fan. Like, I haven't seen...
I did not know that.
I don't know if I've seen all of them all the way through. I do know... I know the one with Sean Connery best, because that one was on TV a lot.
Okay. That's the third one.
I have memories of the second one. Mm-hmm. I remember seeing it at my cousin's house, and I was just a kid, and watching who I thought was the Karate Kid get his heart ripped out over a lava pit.
Ralph DiMaggio?
Yeah, like that was a little bit traumatizing to a kid to see that. So I don't know. I've just never.
So you don't know much about this one?
I know the scene where he grabs the statue and the sandbag and he runs out and there's the ball chasing him.
Yeah. That's
parodied in UHF.
Yeah.
Tell me about it.
Like the plot?
Sure, go for it.
Okay. So yeah, it's about Henry Jones, Indiana Jones. He's a archaeologist who... Well, he's a teacher of archaeology and, rare antiquities and whatever. He works for a university, and he kind of collects on his off time or whatever. He'll go out and try to actually get these relics to bring to the museum. His whole thing is about, preserving these things. So, yeah, in this one, he's in the middle of doing that. His trophy he's trying to get is stolen by his arch nemesis, Rene Belloc, and he loses. Gets back, and he's tasked by the U.S. government to go after his old mentor. He finds out that his old mentor is working with the Nazis, and he claims, no, that's not the case. He's not a Nazi, and they say, well, you're probably using him, and they kind of discover that it's about the Ark of the Covenant, that he fears that the Nazis are trying to get a hold of it to use it to gain power for world destruction, so to speak. So, there you have it.
So, yeah, this one has the scene where he meets Hitler?
Negative.
Man, I'm really
That's
bad
the third
at this.
one.
Okay.
I mean, so I guess, like you said with the motion picture, you've barely seen it or never seen it completely through, so I guess you don't really have much of an opinion on it.
Yeah, it's one of those franchises that seems like a lot of people our age. It was one of their childhood things. I know with I'm more interested in what it's based on than it itself.
Okay.
Much like with Star Wars, George Lucas was a fan of those serials from back in the day. And they had a lot of those where it was adventurers and explorers searching archaeological treasures and mysteries.
Well, yeah, I mean, it definitely has a big throwback. I mean, just the fact that it's set in the 30s, but, you know, they were trying really hard to do a lot of in-camera stunts and effects. I mean, yeah, there's some, you know, toward the end of the movie, I don't know if you saw it, I don't want to spoil it, but, you know, that's when the Industrial Light and Magic does their thing, but, I mean, it's you know, just old school, you know, fights and...
Now, these were rated PG.
Probably, at the time.
Because these are some of the movies that help push the PG-13
I think that was Temple of Doom, the second one, that kind of helped push the PG-13. As I glance over at my Last Crusade poster over there, I see it's PG-13. So, yeah, this was probably PG.
Mm-hmm. I know that Indiana Jones is, along with the being based on those early adventure serials, like little shorts that come up before movies throughout like the 30s and 40s. There are also several real-life explorers that he's kind of based on. And I remember listening to a podcast about the explorer. His name is Percy Fawcett, I believe.
Don't promote other podcasts here.
Oh, no.
Let's do that.
If you ever listen to, like, these real-life explorers, like, some of the stuff that they went through and their adventures, their real-life ones, were really interesting. And if you get a chance to look into it, I would suggest that. So which Indiana Jones to you is the best one?
My personal favorite is The Last Crusade, followed directly by Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Okay. So the
Last Crusade is the one you... Yeah, I would go 3, 1, 2.
Yeah.
But
I think I've heard that that's kind of a popular order for him.
See, I hear most people go
1, 3, 2.
1, 3, 2, but regardless. It's not that 2's bad, but we'll get into that later. Anyway, no, I remember this... I think I've said this many times, so you're going to hear it again. You know, Back to the Future, Indiana Jones, Star Wars, and for me, the first 3 Star Trek Next Generation movies were these movies I watched with my dad. So part of it is just the nostalgia of, and, you know, like, special spot for that. But beyond that, I do really like these movies, and that movie specifically. I mean, I think I always, you know, as a kid, me and Brittany were just talking about this, how, you know, when I was a kid, that's what I wanted to be. I wanted to be.
Well, I'm looking at your wall right now. There's a poster. What does that say?
I don't know. I'm making this up as I go.
And which one is that from?
This movie.
Okay.
That's from this movie. And that was what was great about this movie. You know, like, you have these other movies, like, the hero is practically bulletproof. He just knows what to say, what to do, and that was one of the best parts of the movie. He gets beat up, he gets knocked down, he gets outsmarted, he loses, and then, at one point, they're like, you know, he's like, I'm going to go after the Ark, and they go, how? And he goes, I don't know, I'm making this up as I go. I mean, it was hilarious. You know, the scene, you may know it, you may not, is, you know, he's fighting off these guys in the street.
The gun.
And the big swordsman comes. Now, the real story is that everyone got sick during filming, and he had diarrhea really bad, and he said there was supposed to be an elaborate fight between this big swordsman, and Indy said, or Harrison Ford, I should say, said, why don't I just pull out my gun and shoot him? And I remember as a kid, I laughed at that. Like, I saw the humor is, like, this guy is, like, showing off his stuff, he's swinging around his sword, and then literally, like, he looks all tired, he's hot, and he just pulls the gun out, shoots him, and then starts looking for the girl again, and it was hilarious.
Yeah. Is it also a reference to Han Solo and Greedo?
You know, I remember as a kid when I told my dad, because we were watching these, and I was like, I think that's Han Solo. And he's like, no, I don't think so. And I was like, I think it is. But, I mean, to me, a lot of people will say they think Han Solo is a better character. I say Indiana Jones is way better character. To me, he's, I don't know, like, I just
more
never
fleshed out?
Absolutely. I just never got into Han Solo like I did Indiana Jones. Nothing against Han Solo, but he just, you know.
So, how awful do you think these movies would have been without Steven Spielberg?
Oh, man, yeah. I mean, well, look at, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, which I remember I was so disappointed with that movie when it came out, and I tried to watch, I actually started watching about half of it a month ago, and I don't know if I was just being kind, but I was tolerating it much better than I ever had in the past. That's not to say I would ever buy it because it was on Netflix, so I was watching it for free. I feel like right now I have the box set of the trilogy, and I feel I'm just fine with that. In fact, I remember because I was getting so into these movies. They were still only released on VHS, and when the box set came out for the first time on DVD, I went out that day to buy it. So yeah, I'm a big fan. It's a great set of movies. Great character.
Yep, that's the popular opinion.
All right.
I'll have to rewatch them all sometime for the show.
Yeah, you will. Okay, so the fourth episode Dave and I did from November of 2016 was Jurassic World. Now, I said, Dave, are you sure you want to start with the fourth movie? And he was like, yep, I don't care about order. He's an outlaw.
Well, it's more topical, more recent.
Yeah, that is true. So, yes, Jurassic World from 2015.
Now, I remember listening to this one back before when you guys had first started up.
Yeah. Back when you were a nobody?
Back when I was a nobody.
Yeah.
And then finally I hitched my star to your wagon.
I remember John, was it John telling me? Somebody, it had to have been John, who else would it have been, told me, I can't remember if it was this episode though, that you were like yelling practically or something. You wanted to like say what you thought, like you wanted to be in on it or something.
So you and Dave were pretty pleased with Jurassic World.
Okay, this is what I said. Obviously, the first movie is the best. There's no question of that. However, 2 and 3 were just kind of at best. I said of the sequels, 2, 3, and 4, I thought this was the better of those 3. Yes, because I said I was tired of seeing the whole thing for the first 3 movies is about getting the park in order. Like, I just wanted to see the park actually a live park with tourists there to see it, and that was refreshing. So it wasn't just like a small handful of people in jeopardy. It was like this big groups of people. Yeah, is it a little bit of a soft reboot? Sure. Just like you could say that the same thing with The Force Awakens. But I still enjoyed them. I'm not saying they're masterpieces. I thought they were fun movies, just like Independence Day. There you go.
So I remember going to see this with my friends at the theater, and I was trying so hard to like it and pay attention to it and just really enjoy it, but between me and my friends, we just could not stop sighing and laughing and just making comments throughout the whole thing because it's so ridiculous.
Like what? Give it to me.
Oh, the giant hamster balls, for example.
Yeah.
So they let these kids drive around by themselves in giant hamster balls. I don't care how docile those animals are supposed to be. They could step on that thing and smush you. That's one.
Okay.
2 is, my cell phone has GPS in it. My cell phone, at the time that I got it, was $600, which is expensive for a cell phone. They were going on about these giant hamster balls being decked out with all the latest technology and costing like $3.5 million each. They can't find the hamster ball? Why doesn't it have GPS in it?
Well, okay. First off, concerning the thing I never understood about movies like Jurassic Park and other movies where they portray the herbivores is why
they have like a recall button. You press the button and it brings the hamster ball back.
First of all, okay, with the hamster balls, they should have never been able to free roam with it. And 2, yes, there should have been an override button where they could push home and all of them come back no matter what. But concerning just the portrayal of herbivore dinosaurs in movies, what I don't get is they always act as if you can walk right up to them. Because they won't eat you. They're not a threat. And let's look at
a hippo won't eat you. The hippos kill people more than any other animal in Africa.
Look at your modern day herbivores: elephants, hippopotamus, rhinoceros, bulls.
I saw a video on YouTube
wild
the other
horses,
day where a rhinoceros was flipping a Jeep like it was nothing, and there were people in it.
Yeah. It baffles me that people are afraid of these animals now, but they always portray them in the movies as just, giant puppies.
I had heard that one of the backdrops of the story is they kind of wanted to show how people have become less impressed with things nowadays.
Yeah.
So that was the idea. Like, we've had dinosaurs for a while, but everybody's not impressed. So now we have to make a dragon or something, something ridiculous like that. First of all, the park's only for rich people.
Yeah, I don't know who could really afford to go there.
So I can't imagine, if everybody is still flocking to Disney World, they would be flocking to Jurassic Park as soon as they could. It'd be the same idea. The B-plot of the movie had Vincent D'Onofrio wanting to use dinosaurs as weapons in Afghanistan. That is a Sci-Fi Channel movie plot. I have seen that's like King Cobra versus Mega Snake type of plot. Why are they using this in a giant Hollywood blockbuster movie? Why did they tout that they used animatronics? Oh, look, we're doing it that way, and then cover it all up with CG. Like the scene where Chris Pratt's in there with the Velociraptors. They're completely covered in CG, so why even have the robots? Just do it in CG then.
Okay, I remember when I heard that they did some animatronics, I remember thinking, like, everything looked CGI to me. Where was it? And I know one of them was where he's, like, cradling the head of a dying brontosaurus or whatever. I don't care if I'm using the wrong word. Brontosaurus. And, yeah, like, it kind of dies because you find out the Indominus Rex is killing for sport. And I remember thinking, like, that was an animatronic? That looked CGI. And, yeah, then I later learned that's what they did. It was kind of a big puppet neck and head, but then they covered it up with CGI to face.
And then we have the characters. I didn't really care about the two boys that much. They were supposed to be all sad because their parents were getting divorced. Their mom is Kitty Sanchez from Arrested Development and sends her off to what's her name?
Aunt Claire,
but what's
Bryce Dallas Howard?
Bryce Dallas Howard, who I think is kind of cute. So, but like,
she has very like strange eyes. Like her eyes are like this ice blue thing. I know that's not relevant to anything we're talking about. Look at her eyes. There's something strange and hypnotizing about them.
She's a clever girl.
Good one.
So, yeah, like it just like the whole plot didn't really make sense to me, and she didn't really pay attention to her nephews. The acting, like from everybody, pretty much was non-existent in the movie. There was one scene towards the end where Bryce Dallas Howard, like the T-Rex or something, is coming, and they're at the main park area, and I think it's raining.
She's running her high heels. Yes.
Run! She screams, run! And like that was the only time I really felt like, wow, she's doing a good job acting. Okay. And then the whole rest of the movie, it was trash. The idea that the Velociraptors were pets just seemed kind of silly to me, but I could get along with it. But there was so much silly stuff piled on top of it.
I mean, I could understand that you can train a lot of animals. I mean, I would never, But
you have to believe that, while you also have to believe that something that looks like a Tyrannosaurus Rex can also turn invisible. And is smart enough to chew out a GPS out of its arm.
Yeah, I mean, there is some stuff, but I mean...
Oh, and it was going around killing things for sport. For sport?
Okay. Technically, in the first Jurassic Park, they did say that there was some gene split or mixing of animals. They talked about the frog. They use gene sequencing things of a frog to
it can hide itself from the heat detectors.
I know. Well, they said how they were using like parts of certain things of an octopus.
Thing didn't fly.
Wow. Do you know what the original ideal for Jurassic?
I would have rather watched that.
Do you know what it is?
Yeah, where the humans were mixed with the dinosaurs. Now, that would have been
hybrids. That's a movie I'd like to see, but not connected to Jurassic Park.
That would have been a horrible movie I would have loved to watch.
Yeah.
And then it got there were so many stupid things that piled up in this movie on top of each other that by the time it got to the end and they're having that big fight scene at the end,
you loved it.
And they were all teaming up on the Indomitable Rex. It was so ridiculous. I leaned over to Rob and I say, watch, they're going to high-five each other now. And then they did it. The Velociraptor and the T-Rex, it wasn't a literal high-five, but they kind of gave each other a look and then ran off. I was expecting to see one of them like show a Mentos afterwards.
I more took it as if they were almost figuring out if they were going to fight each other, maybe, but... just
takes $1 billion to make a dinosaur. You want to make a dinosaur and use it as a weapon when you can just shoot a missile into a cave.
Yeah, no, that part never did make sense because
it was the dumbest thing. And the one character that I really did like was actually the park owner, the Indian guy who was flying the helicopter around. I loved that guy. And then something stupid happened. Oh, how about this? How does a 16-year-old fix a 20-year-old Jeep? Did he go outside and like squash a dinosaur to make new oil?
They have no gasoline. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. Yeah, I mean...
They just, they wanted you to see the old park, so people who'd seen the movie before...
Yeah, they wanted you to see the visitor center and
so,
the
I don't know,
Jeeps.
I wanted to like the movie so much, but it was so stupid. Like, it falls victim to a lot of today's, more flash, less thought into what you're doing.
I'm not arguing with you on these points that, is it trying to just, be flashy? And yeah, absolutely.
And if you go back and watch the first one, it's so an intellectual movie that barely showed the monsters, and that's what they're supposed to be, as monsters.
See, and I would almost feel like that was the first movie where I never thought of dinosaurs as just a prehistoric animal until Jurassic Park, the first one, because I thought they actually did a really good job portraying that they were just an extinct animal. You know, they're large, but they're not monsters. You know, yeah, they can be vicious and mean or, you know, deadly, but I never thought of them as monsters from that movie. Don't look at me like that.
Well, anyway.
Regardless.
I hated Jurassic World, and from what I've heard, Jurassic World 2 is even worse.
Yes, that one was bad. This one is fun. Again, I know it's the same thing I said with Independence Day now.
I know for a lot of people,
it's a fun movie.
It's so easy for a lot of people just to go ahead and flip their brain off and enjoy a goofy movie like that. But like when it makes as much money as it did.
Well, here's the thing too. I mean, I was super upset when they ruined Star Trek. That's right, ruined Star Trek. Jar Jar Abrams. But Jurassic Park, I already felt like none of the sequels were quite living up to what the original one was anyway. That's why, for me, I look at it with much kinder eyes because, again, I thought it was the better sequel.
In my opinion, it goes, and some people will disagree with me on the middle here, but for me it goes 1, 3, 2, 4.
Okay, I'll give you this. Before the fourth one came out, I always said the third one was better than the second one as well. That's
one of those movies, we were talking about this. Well, maybe I was talking to Amir about it. Hey, shout out Amir. Where we were talking about like Iron Man 3 and Iron Man 2. And we've had that similar discussion. Like, why does everybody seem to kind of like that one and trash the second one?
But I feel like I remember when the second one came out, people loved it. And then it's like then people turned their backs on it.
I remember going back and forth on it. Liking it, disliking it, liking it, disliking it.
I liked it from the get-go.
If I'm thinking back on it, and I've watched it a few times, it's not really that memorable. There's a couple scenes like where the buses are kind of hanging off the cliff.
I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about Iron Man 2 still.
No, Jurassic Park 2.
Yeah, well, we're talking... Okay.
So there's the scene where like the buses are hanging off the cliff.
I think it's funny that the dinosaurs stopped just so we can have that dramatic glass-breaking scene. I always thought that was kind of silly.
It was a good tension-filled scene. It was all right.
I guess, but...
There's the scene where... The stupid scene with the gymnastics and Jeff Goldblum's adopted stepdaughter or whatever she is.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it was he adopted her or if the woman he married at one point, that was her kid, but then he divorced her.
I don't know. I just remember her doing the gymnastics, which was... I think it was supposed to be kind of like the scene where they're going up in the ceiling in the first one. It's supposed to be reminiscent of that, but it was sillier.
Okay.
You saw some more dinosaurs that you didn't get to see in the first one. I don't know. There wasn't... And then, the T-Rex, which... It should have been memorable for the T-Rex running around in the city. It really wasn't.
That to me was like... a small version Godzilla,
Yeah, the 76 ball rolling, and then him with the doghouse hanging out of his mouth. But, other than that,
Yeah. Like I said, I can look on it with kinder eyes than you.
So, I would recommend that everybody stop watching movies like that. But, hey.
Chris Pratt seems like a nice guy, but I think he's one character. And I feel like every time he's trying to be serious, I can't buy into him trying to act legit. And again, I know that sounds really mean, but to me, he's kind of a one-trick pony. But he seems like a super nice guy if I ever met him. And I wouldn't say that to his
One
face.
of these days, Chris Pratt and The Rock are just going to come over here. They're going to be listening to the Skate Podcast one of these days.
Yeah, and just beat the crap out of me.
Yeah, we're making all sorts of enemies over here. Or you are. I like Chris Pratt and The Rock.
I never said I didn't like him. I just said he's not a good actor.
I agree with you. He doesn't have really a range.
Yeah.
And... I don't know. He's just a guy that's hot right now.
All right, and this will probably be the last.
I mean that in the most physical way possible.
He's sexy. All right, this will probably be the last one we cover for...
Sure, what is it?
Episode 5 from November of 2016 was The Goonies, and I know already you don't have much history with The Goonies.
This is an Indiana Jones all over again. So I had not seen The Goonies ever once until I was 22, 23.
Wow. I feel like you missed out. You missed out, man.
I was working at the restaurant down there, and one of the waitresses let me borrow it.
Okay.
I don't know. Seeing it when you're adult, it must be different than seeing it when you're a kid.
Can you, as best you can, try to imagine if you saw it as a 7, 8, 9, 10 year? Can you imagine what it probably...
It would have been awesome.
Okay. So at least you can admit that it's a good movie, you just don't have the nostalgia for it.
Yeah, I think that's one of those ones that kind of relies on the nostalgia. I'm not saying it was bad, but... I don't know. I don't have the same connection to it that a lot of other people do. There's a lot of cool things in it. Sloth, probably one of the greatest movie characters there is out there. Everybody loves Chunk.
Well, again, for me being a big adventure kid and Indiana Jones, to me, this is like kid Indiana Jones, but not kiddified. It's, they're swearing and they're, it's not like they're trying to really tame it down, but it's, I don't know. I love this movie.
For a modern audience, I think you'd be best to see it when you're younger.
Oh, absolutely.
Teenager probably wouldn't care.
There is a list of movies that I want to make sure Benji sees at a young age. So in a few years,
he'll be looking at it.
And this is definitely one of them. To me, this was, I remember just loving it. And there's so much stuff that doesn't make sense or but you just got to let it go and go with it. I don't know. To me, it's like one of those movies also where the villains are kind of funny on their own. They're kind of interesting. They're not just like bad guys. It's funny the way the brothers bicker. They're going after the kids, but then it's almost like Everybody Loves Raymond, where the two brothers are fighting for the mom's affection, so they start fighting each other and like being like little kid brothers themselves. It's hilarious, and you got this woman that's probably this tall, and she's terrifying,
I love that actress.
Yeah. The only thing I think of her from is Throw Mama from a Train.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
How could you do you come to Pip?
Yes. But there's a part right at the beginning where they are fighting over a pizza, the two brothers, the two older guys, and they basically are pulling their guns on each other over a slice of pizza. It's hilarious. And there's this one shot where basically because they killed an FBI agent and they got him in the freezer, the body of the basement where the kids are at, and they have where the body is falling toward Chunk. What's interesting to me is you think they would have just used a dummy. That's an actual living guy basically acting dead but making sure to fall and turn his head so it's like kind of creepy for the kid. Mm-hmm. And I just think that's crazy that this guy is doing that, but like not blinking, totally portraying a lifeless body.
That's an example of how, they used to take more care and effort. One of those things where now it'd just be CG.
Yeah. They make little references to other things, like Gremlins is referenced, and
which also has a Steven Spielberg connection.
Yeah, yeah. But, it's just, I don't know. It's great. There's obviously an Indiana Jones connection. They say that the one of Fratelli brothers wears the hat, was one of the hats for Indiana Jones.
Was the Slick Shoes kid also in an Indiana Jones movie?
Yes.
Okay.
I used to know his name. Yeah, he was Data, was his name in Goonies.
And there's your Star Trek connection.
There you go. And, he was Short Round in Temple of Doom.
What happened to that kid? It seemed he was in 2 giant movies and then just disappeared.
I mean, I know he was in a few other things. Don't ask me to name them. I don't know what, but I mean, he was in a few things. But yeah, these are the big ones that most people will think of him. But hey, that's great movies to be remembered for. I think. I'm just gonna skip that. But I'm gonna run this by you. You tell me what you think. Okay. I remember hearing somebody talking about this a while ago, and I thought it was an interesting idea. Okay. I don't like it.
There's all those theories out there, a theory about this movie, and you're just making stuff up. You're trying to reinterpret something to make people think about it a different way.
That the dead body was Indiana Jones that they find?
No. That somebody was talking about how the movie didn't start to get more surreal. It was all very realistic and grounded up until the point where there's a scene where police are chasing the mobsters. Does that happen?
Right at the beginning of the movie,
is it right immediately at the beginning?
Pretty much. That's how they introduce the characters as the Fratellis are fleeing the scene. This is what they're driving past all the kids.
Is that it's at that point when the movie starts to take the adventurous turn, right? So I guess if that's right at the beginning, then that's not
unless there's something else I'm not thinking of. But that's the opening scene.
I guess Chunk runs to the window and is watching it.
Yes.
So all these kids are sad because they're going to have to be moving. The town is
essentially, yeah. The land is, yeah.
So his idea was that actually the movie ends up all taking place inside of Chunk's head.
Okay.
And it's all his imagination. It's him just, thinking about it this is how we could stay, And some of the ideas he uses to back up his theory is that at the end of the movie, it's totally unrealistic for this weird family, or for this perfectly normal family, to see this gigantic mutated man and just like let him hang out with their son.
Yeah,
and,
that is weird.
You know, that's the kind of stuff that would happen.
Well, I mean, they did show
and Chunk and Sloth are the two that basically have superpowers. Like Chunk can smell anything from a mile away. Isn't that like something he does?
He smells
like food.
Ice cream,
he knows
and pizza.
He technically has a superpower in this movie. And then, you know, Sloth is Superman. He wears a Superman shirt, right?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
So, like, these are things that would happen in a kid's head. So that's why he's saying, like, the movie is actually from Chunk's perspective. It's his imagination.
It's an interesting idea. I will say, I don't think they show, as best I can remember, that he actually says to his parents, like, hey, this adult man is going to live with us. He just says it to Sloth.
Right.
I mean, you know, maybe the parents were like, no.
I've only seen the movie maybe twice.
Okay.
So I don't know how valid his points were, but hearing him talk about
it's an interesting concept, but, I mean, I just take it as, you know, face value. Yeah, I believe that was directed by Richard Donner, so yeah, he snuck the super... It was cool when Sloth did that. He ripped open his
Goonies
shirt.
is directed by Richard Donner?
I believe so.
It's funny how there's a string of movies throughout the 80s that Steven Spielberg slaps his name on, and somebody else
a lot of people, yeah.
But they all feel very much like Steven Spielberg.
Supposedly I don't know how
well, we talked about it in Poltergeist.
He directed a scene of the Goonies, like a certain shot, the pipe scene.
Yeah, we talked about this in Poltergeist, how a lot of people say that really... What's his name that directed Chainsaw Massacre? I can't remember his name.
Yeah.
Hooper.
Super, duper.
It's Hooper. Toby Hooper.
Yes,
so
that's something.
He was the director of Poltergeist on paper, but a lot of people say, even like people that were there, saying, nah, it's really Steven Spielberg. Mm-hmm. And when you watch the movie, it really has a Steven Spielberg feel to it. And I don't know how familiar I am with Toby Hooper's work outside of the first Chainsaw Massacre, but I didn't see a connection between those two. Now, with Gremlins, that's Joe Dante. Mm-hmm. I can see Joe Dante in there, but I also see a lot of Spielberg in there, too.
Yeah. I actually just rewatched Gremlins not that long ago.
Well, that's a movie we'll do down the road. Yeah. I think we're done for today, so we did 5 for this.
Yeah. So
first
you had
of Ketchup.
Yeah, you had 14 movies to catch up. But I just I thought it'd be cool just to see where I stood on it still. So get your thoughts.
Next one's probably be like what, King Kong, get that monkey off our back.
I'll tell you in just a second if you want me to read down the list.
Okay.
Predator, Galaxy Quest, King Kong, all 3 versions up until 2005. Star Wars, Die Hard, Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, and your last one will be The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Okay.
So, stay tuned for those. Thanks for listening, if you made it this far. Like, share, review. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Stay tuned for Monster Month.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm about to travel through time. I bid you adieu.
Don't stop now!
You can't go! All the plants are gonna die!
Where are you going? I've got to return some videotapes.
Bye, Felicia.
Are you eavesdropping, Brandon?
There's another one that came out a few years ago that I really liked. It wasn't their best movie, but it took place in the 50s and it had to do with Hollywood.
Okay.
So, Josh Brolin, again, see they reuse a lot of the same actors. I keep burping.
It's okay.
So, I'm kind of like that with the Coen Brothers.
Pardon me?
I'm kind of like that with the Coen Brothers.
Okay.
I haven't seen all of their movies. But I haven't seen one yet that I don't like.
Okay.
And they, their movies have a certain feel to them. Like you can tell you're watching one of their movies most of the time. A lot of their movies have like a real dark tone of comedy, even in a serious situation. but they aren't necessarily comedy movies.
Right.
I see people having fun with it. It's just, for me, it might be a little too cheesy.
Because, like, there's no Hawkman, there's no Emperor Ming, and Mongo.
Yeah, they got rid of all that stuff.
Yeah.
And they changed Flash into a guy that can run kind of fast.
Yeah, and, like, they cut half of his name off. Flash Gordon.
Yeah, they changed his first name to The.
Yeah, that's stupid. I don't like when they do stuff like that.
Yeah, so anyway, the ones on Netflix, if you watch the first season of Daredevil, the first season of Jessica Jones...
The only thing we could do is watch Wilford Brimley. Isn't it Wilford Brimley?
Yeah.
Anyway, the only thing we could... Oh, wow, it is. You should try to sneak a picture. He makes a valid point. Is like, he doesn't know that his wishes will cause him to lose memory. So you should think, okay, use
It was
wishes.
written really stupid because it was for kids and they didn't care. It was basically what
And then, like, yeah, he, like, instead of saying... Like, oh, I need enough steps to get me all the way up, or how about just wish I was already up, or how
Wish
about
for
I
another
just...
step. I wish for another step. All right. So you brought up X-Men.
Yeah, what about it?
I was thinking about this
No.
the other day. You know, that deal with Fox and Disney. It's not through yet, but it's getting there. Eventually, they're going to want to use those characters in their cinematic universe.
Or how about I just wish that the villain is defeated, or I just wish that everything was all right. And instead of doing that, he does dumb stuff like it.
All right.
And cutscene.